You're listening to Informed America Radio, pushing back the frontiers of ignorance 24/7. Now, The Teri O'Brien Show.
May I have your attention, please?
Here we go. Y'all ready?
It's not about being right in the ideological sense of the word. It's about committing common sense every single day. It's politics, it's pop culture, and it's the news of the day, both serious stuff and the water cooler stuff. I've never seen such a bunch of petty, bitter, mean-spirited, vindictive people. And I'm really glad, Democrats, I'm really glad that all the serious problems in our country are solved now. And we can focus on being vindictive over this guy who's going to be ambassador to Belgium. That's like the most important problem we have facing our country right now. Way to go, Democrats. This is what I'm saying. My work is never done. We don't need to investigate the motive. As sad as this is, when you put on the red suspenders.
Put on the uniform.
Yeah, you put on the big shoes. You put on the white face and the red nose and the red makeup, the wig, that crazy-looking wig, and you go out there and flop around with the big shoes. I'm sorry, I don't want to see anybody hurt, but I have to say, you're an intimidating and frightening presence in the community at that point. And some might say that without even knowing it, you're actually asking for it because you are dressed up as a clown. One thing we always say is the Second Amendment is not about hunting. The Second Amendment is about the right to keep and bear arms to prevent the government from becoming tyrannical. That's what it's about. It's not about being able to go out and shoot bunny rabbits.
Ooh, what a girl. She's always in a whirl. Always going new places, seeing new faces. That girl on the go.
Teri O'Brien.
Wonderful girl on the go.
The most loyal and the smartest. The most loyal and the smartest. But you look at what goes on, and we know and we see, and they always like to say, he's plain spoken. I don't know, is that a positive or not? You don't need a plain spoken person, but think of it. When you have a word to describe your leadership in this country, what's a better word than the word stupid? There's no better word. Now, I can come up and I can go to Soros, I can go to different things and come up with other words, but there's just no better word, am I right? I used to say incompetent, and that's pretty good, but stupid's better. I mean, it's better. When you look at these deals that we make, when you look at what we do with China, when you look at what we do with Mexico, they're friends of mine. I employ thousands of people over the years, tens of thousands of Hispanics. And in Nevada, I'm leading. The poll just came. I'm leading in Nevada with Hispanics. And I said I'm going to win with Hispanics. And I'm going to win with African Americans, too. I'm getting great numbers with African Americans because I'm going to get jobs for people. I'm taking our jobs back. What has Obama done for African Americans? They're in, relatively speaking, the worst shape they've ever been in. You look at kids, they have 58% unemployment. You look at people that are 35, 45, 50 in their prime, their unemployment's through the roof. So Obama's done nothing. I mean, with him, it's all talk. He's like your typical politician. All talk, no action. I mean, just a bad guy.
Donald Trump from this morning in Muscatine, Iowa, at a campaign rally here on this January 24th, 2015 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show, this big NFL playoff Sunday. Hey, maybe you're watching the playoffs and you're not listening live. If it is 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, January 24th, 2016, to be specific, then you can join us in the Live and Lively chat room, and that's a great way to participate and have an interactive experience here with the Teri O'Brien Show. But that's not the only way No. You have many other ways. You can go to TeriO'Brien.com, and that's where the Live and Lively chat room is, of course, TeriO'Brien.com. And you can actually send us a voicemail. There's a little tab on the right side of the page. Click it, record your message, and we will definitely listen to your message. If the messages are good, we might even play them on the air. You can also write to us at the Teri O'Brien Show at gmail.com. And if you are a person who so generously helps us keep the lights on by making a monthly gift to the show or contributing at least $100 a year in a lump sum, or, a variety of one-time contributions that add up to $100 over a calendar year, then you can actually write to us at premium at TeriO'Brien.com. And you're saying, why would you want to do that? Well, if you value this program, this is where the truth is, right? I mentioned the NFL playoffs. Tonight, also, the return of the X-Files. Who loves the X-Files? I do. The truth is out there, right? Well, the truth is here. And if you want us to continue to provide you with information that the pretend news does not, because I watch so you don't have to, we do need your help. And so those of you who do help, we really appreciate it. We would not be here but for people going to the tip jar and contributing to keep the lights on. And I got sad news earlier this week that one of the programs on Red State Talk Radio where we are syndicated is just calling off his show altogether. And this is a show that has been on a long time. It's been on over 10 years, but the guy doing it just said, you know what? I can't do it anymore. I don't get the financial support that I need to do the show. And now it's an expensive hobby. So I can completely relate to that. And I think a lot of times people underestimate how much work it is to really do a good show. Speaking of that, the Machete of Truth. What about that guy? He had an encore show last Wednesday evening, and I believe he's going to do a new program this coming Wednesday, but I haven't heard from him lately. So, but the Machete of Truth, 60 Minutes of Truth, I believe is going to talk about the man we just heard at the top of the show there, one Donald J. Trump from this morning. As usual, not mincing words, and we're going to talk about Cruz versus Trump. It was a big toss-up today when we were deciding what to do for the program today. Should we go wall-to-wall on the National Review deciding to do a special issue to come out against Donald Trump, or should we talk about snow? Should we talk about the fact that it's winter and it's snowing? Now, I don't want to trivialize the fact that this has caused a lot of hardship to a number of people. And there have been some people who died in this recent snowstorm. There are people that still don't have electricity. It's a really bad thing. But the people that I do think deserve to be mocked are the members of the lamestream media, as usual, out there in their stocking caps, doing their stand-ups, talking about how it's snowing because it's winter. Please, people. It's serious. It requires a great deal of attention from governmental agencies to keep the roads clear. And, you have to try to keep your family safe. And God forbid anybody is out there shoveling snow who is not in really good shape, especially, frankly, if you were a man over 50 years old. You know what? It is just not worth it. It is just not worth it to have the grabber unless you're in really good shape. Get a neighborhood kid to do it for you. Seriously, it's just not. That's my cautionary tale to all of you, my little bit of advice as a person with that master's degree in exercise physiology that you guys know about. I know that it's very dangerous. We're going to hear more Donald Trump, but we decided not to talk about exclusively about snow. I think that's about all I'm going to mention, what I just did. And we decided not to talk a lot about National Review. I will mention, of course, I'm a fan of National Review. I've been reading it for many years. I'm a fan of Mr. Buckley's, of course. But I wasn't that thrilled with this latest issue that they came out with. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I'm still reading it. Part of me, I hate to think I suffer from the corrosive cynicism that afflicts so many people today. Part of me said, gee, are they coming out with this Trump thing just to increase their circulation? because we know that all these other media outlets, Donald Trump, he is everywhere, isn't he? He's on every Sunday show. He's on every cable show. He's everywhere. Why? He gets ratings. That's why. People like to see him. You heard a little bit of why right there in that soundbite. When I was watching this live rally today, I have to admit, I didn't want to bail out of it. I was enjoying watching him speak. And so, National Review, they've had a lot of financial problems. They've lost, I think, in 2005, their editor said over the past 50 years, they've lost $25 million. Talk about an expensive hobby. And, of course, they're in the middle right now of litigation that's been going on for several years. This climate change fraudster, this Michael Mann guy, you know who he is. I think he also sued Mark Stein. He's suing them. He's been suing them because I don't remember. I think it was in 2012 or 13. They published a piece where they referred to him as the Jerry Sandusky of scientists or something along those lines. Anyway, the name Jerry Sandusky was invoked to compare to this guy, which, of course, given that Jerry Sandusky is a notorious and infamous child molester, that's probably not something you want to be compared to. So anyway, they're still in the procedural part of this litigation, even to see if it can even go forward. Is Michael Mann really even a public figure? Because as you probably know, as a matter of Supreme Court law in this country, unlike Great Britain, it's a lot easier for famous people to bring slander and defamation suits, not so much in this country, where you have to prove known falsity or reckless disregard of the truth. Now, there's also a lot of other nuances to that. When you use an analogy or a metaphor like Jerry Sandusky, that could be arguably opinion, and you might be able to get around that. But the point is, they're still in court arguing about it, and the National Review fired one group of lawyers because they couldn't get rid of this case, and it's still going on. So the point is, they could use an infusion of readership. So part of me, when I saw this whole thing, this big issue, and I'm continuing to read it, and there's a lot of respected conservatives who wrote in this particular National Review issue. And they make some very good points, actually, about Donald Trump. And we'll talk about some of those. So, there is absolutely a case against Donald Trump. And one thing I will say, before we even discuss the case against Donald Trump, such as it is, one thing that always makes me get my hackles up is when people embrace sort of a cult of the personality, and so that you can't even question anything about a particular candidate. Donald Trump this morning said, or I guess it was yesterday, he said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose any supporters. I dispute that. Although I'm glad he said that, because it did give the communist mayor of New York City this morning on ABC the chance to say that, Donald Trump, he's so insensitive. Doesn't he understand the scourge of gun violence? Yeah, talk about leftists who have no sense of humor. Now, whether that line is funny or not from Trump, I don't know. You be the judge. I don't think it's true. But he is right that his supporters are very loyal. And those of you who have ever tried to debate them or tell them you've got some reservations about maybe supporting Donald Trump, you will actually feel the wrath of some of them who will actually just they will have none of it. They're sort of like prosecutors who decide that one particular individual is guilty of a crime and they don't care. And you can present all the evidence. You can have videotape of someone else committing the crime. You could have DNA. You can have whatever. And it doesn't matter. They've seized on this one guy. Well, that's kind of how they are. A lot of the really fanatical Trump supporters. And I have to say, I don't think that's healthy at all. I don't think it's healthy at all. And I also don't think it means that after you get done asking all your questions, you might not still end up supporting that person. And you guys know, I have not endorsed anyone. I have not endorsed anyone yet. and I don't know if and when I actually will. Have any of you endorsed anyone yet? And if so, why? If you're in the chat room, please tell us there, or please go to terryobrien.com. Leave me a voicemail and tell me who are you supporting? The Iowa caucuses are 1 week from tomorrow. So we'll find out. If you want to weigh in on the Democrat race, we're going to talk later in the program about Hillary. Her legal problems are getting worse and worse. You're not hearing any of this on the pretend news. But they are. She was on with Chuck Todd this morning on Meet the Press. He really didn't get into any of these latest revelations that are extremely serious. And she just repeated again her same lame story. So, if you want to get into that and talk about this communist Bernie Sanders, that's fine too. I don't know if he's going to win Iowa, New Hampshire. I was thinking, that at some point they're going to have to use an expression that might put a really kind of disgusting image in your heads. They might have to at some point kiss and make up. And that made me think of those commercials. Have you guys seen those commercials? They're running for this one particular online dating service, and it's for people over 50. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's this commercial where these two people are making out in a car, like it's up at like some kind of lookout point, like kind of make-out place that, people would go. And some cop comes and knocks on the car window, and the driver says, hey, you kids are going to have to get out of here. And when they roll down the window, he sees like it's these two like grandparents in there. And I'm thinking, maybe they should do something like that with Hillary and Bernie Sanders. They could have them, making out. Or would that help? I'm not sure that would help. Anyway, at some point, if she doesn't end up indicted and in prison, then, they're going to have to make nice. So if you want to weigh in on that. But I haven't endorsed anyone yet. And I can certainly understand why people are supporting Ted Cruz, which we can talk about. But there's also a couple of reasons that I have a real problem endorsing Ted Cruz, which I'm going to talk about during this edition of the program. What else do I have coming up? I have Hillary. Of course, we talked about, this Iran deal. You heard Donald Trump in that opening soundbite mention the best word to use to describe a lot of the people that negotiate for our country is stupid. I can't argue with that. Although when it comes to the Iran deal, as I've told you guys many times, it's not that the people negotiating are stupid or incompetent, and I'm not suggesting that they're not. But with respect to this Iran deal, that's not why this deal was made. This deal was made because it was designed to bolster and build up Iran, to make it a regional power, and in that way diminish the evil United States. And as I've said before, we've got President Payback, and I don't think you have to ask yourselves. You can. It's a fun thought experiment, but I don't think it'll take you very long to resolve this. When Barack Obama was a young man during the Iranian hostage crisis, the original one, the Carter one, not the most recent ones, whose side do you think he was on? The side of the evil Shah, the imperialistic, imposed leader that America went in and deposed, that Moqsadeh guy, the CIA operation. The left loves to talk about that stuff, right? And brought in their puppet, the Shah. Now, whose side do you think Obama was on in that argument? There's no question. As a committed leftist, he was against the Shah, without a doubt. I'm sure when he saw the movie Argo, I know what side he was rooting for. I think you do too. So that's, a no-brainer. So we'll talk about that. Let's see what else is on this is unbelievable. And I described this in someplace I was right. Oh, I know. The premium subscribers, when you guys that make a monthly gift, I always send you out a little heads up about what's going to be on the show. And I said a heartwarming story about one of Obama's dreamers. Oh, yeah. well, maybe not so heartwarming. Let's just put it this way. This one is not a valedictorian or a military hero. Will suffice to say that. And also the preview of coming attractions. We know we have the rape jihad in Germany. We got more revelations about what's going on in Germany. It's up for grabs. So thanks to these migrants that Mrs. Merkel invited. And how many of them have they lost track of, by the way? Yeah. We'll get into that and lots more. So maybe we should hear a little more Donald Trump before we go into the break. Let me see what I've got, because I did grab a couple pieces of audio from this rally this morning in Muscatine, Iowa.
Because I'm dealing with all these people, and then I'm going to have to deal against Hillary if she doesn't go to jail, or I'm going to have to deal against Bernie. Or somebody, or Bloomberg comes in, which would be great. I'd love to have him come in because I love the competition, frankly. I mean, it would be great if I'd love Bloomberg to come in. So I'm dealing with all these people, and I have to be a little bit tough, and I have to be quick because I don't have enough time to be so nice, right? But if I'm president, I would have a little bit of a different demeanor, but don't worry. The demeanor would be a little bit different, but don't worry, it'll be the same attitude. You understand that, okay? We're not going to change, okay? No, he was worried. He said, please don't change. Don't worry. But I'll be a little bit softer. Maybe the attitude will be tougher, but the words will be softer. You know, I tell people, I'm like, it's real easy. I can be so politically correct. I go to Palm Beach. I own the great place in Palm Beach. We have the great society people in Palm Beach. They always want me sitting next to them for a lot of reasons, right? And I sit next to ladies. Oh, Donald, it's so beautiful to have you with us. It's so beautiful. And I talk to them, you look so lovely tonight. See, now in modern day society, you're not allowed to say that about a woman, right? You can't say that. But I've never had anybody complain. But they are very up in the air, and they're very nice people, and they raise a lot of money for charity. And I'm so politically correct. In fact, they leave, they say, I can't believe it, how sophisticated Donald is. I can do it any different way. The problem we have is our country has a problem. I don't have time to be politically correct. Does that make sense? We don't have time. It takes a lot of time.
Donald J. Trump, presumptive Republican presidential nominee. I don't know, maybe not. Here on this January 24th, 2016 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show from this morning in Muscatine, Iowa. And I think he's right. And, there's a great part of his appeal. Now, so we know the case for Donald Trump. We've just heard it there in a lot of those sound bites. And we'll hear some more. Doesn't have time to be politically correct. He also spoke about the fact that our police and veterans are the most mistreated people in the country, how illegal aliens are treated better than our veterans. These are things that here in flyover country we believe, and we're frankly quite angry about. He also says that he's going to stand up for our country against all of our enemies. And when you have a regime that won't even say the name of an enemy, that's very refreshing. So we know that that's the case. Another part of the case in favor of Donald Trump, as he points out all the time, he's not beholden to anyone. He doesn't owe anybody because he's using his own money, as opposed to most politicians. And let's add another idea there, another thing in his favor. He's not a politician, a traditional politician. So these are all things that I think are part of his great appeal. And the fact that he's not part of the club. He's not part of the Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, Speaker Ryan club. He had nothing to do with that omnibus spending bill that got passed, the one that funded the sanctuary cities and Obama's illegal amnesty and and the seeding of the country with refugees from jihadist hotbeds that we can't even vet who these people are. He had nothing to do with any of that. And that alone, for a lot of people, is enough to say, you know what, Donald? I think we're ready for somebody different. More about the case for and against Donald Trump and of course, the case for and against Ted Cruz. On the other side, we've got Hillary, we've got migrants, we've got dreamers, all that and more here on this January 24th, 2016 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show. I, of course, will be right back.
What decade was Ronald Reagan president of the United States? What decade was Ronald Reagan president of the United States?
19? Oh, decade. Oh, year?
Just give me the whole decade.
What decade? It was the 80s, wasn't that? Yeah.
That's right. It was the 80s.
19th century? Or?
It was the Wait, it was the 20th century. Yeah, we're in the 21st century now.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Go for it. 80s?
That's right. You got it. Good job.
1982.
Yes, he was the 80s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the 80s.
That's good. No, you got it. What decade was Ronald Reagan president?
Ronald Reagan. I'd say 1960.
The 70s. The 80s.
Which one?
The 80s.
All right, yeah.
40s?
You're getting colder. You're going backwards. Try going...
60s?
The 19...
You're in the right century.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a good
He
excuse.
was impeached, right?
There you go again.
You're listening to Informed America Radio.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it. If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist. If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist. If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist.
But generally, if you look at how I've tried to govern over the last 4 years and how I'll continue to try to govern, I'm not driven by some ideological agenda. I'm a pretty practical guy, and I just want to make sure that things work. And one of the nice things about never having another election again, I will never campaign again, is, I think you can rest assured that all I care about is making sure that I leave behind an America that is stronger, more prosperous, more stable, more secure than it was when I came into office.
Yeah!
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard. So you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these are actually pretty good.
You don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
You just need feedthepig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at feedthepig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Carrying concealed isn't for everyone. It definitely wasn't for me up until a few years ago. My name is Kimberly Weeks, and I can tell you that violent crimes do happen. My apartment in college was fairly close to campus. We were on a ground floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, very safe. When we signed our lease, they said, we have absolutely 0 crime reports that have happened here. It's a very safe neighborhood. In the early morning hours of May 12th, 2006, I was awakened by a stranger who was holding me down with a shirt covering my face. And he was saying, "Shut up. Don't say anything. Just stay quiet." He stayed in my apartment for the next 2 hours and sexually assaulted me. And at 20 years old, I had to lay there thinking about how I was going to die. Law enforcement in my case was fantastic, but they were there after the crime was committed. I would say that my fear of guns disappeared when I got my second chance at my life. Protecting myself is my right. Michael Bloomberg would like to say that he is doing this to make everyone safer. Unfortunately, Michael Bloomberg is not making me safer. If my right to self-protection is taken away, that leaves me very, very vulnerable and feeling very scared once again. I know how best to defend myself. Mr. Bloomberg, you do not have the right to tell me how to defend myself.
Sassy! Sassy!
This week's episode, Trouble on Rock Hill.
Ain't nothing like running up and down Rock Hill.
Hey, let's move this rock.
Whoa! Sassy! Johnny's stuck under that rock. Yeah, girl, go tell Mr. Gunderson to bring his truck. You'll tell him, but only after you dispel a stereotype associated with shelter pets? People think shelter pets come with lots of initial veterinary costs?
It's dusty under here.
But in reality, most shelter pets have been vaccinated, neutered, and microchipped in case they get lost?
My pants ripped.
Sassy, Johnny needs help. What Johnny really needs is more discipline and better parental supervision? You use big words, Sassy.
Still under the rock.
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
Ready for more hot girl on government action? The Teri O'Brien Show, live in vivid red, white, and blue. Every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time, or on demand, anytime, at TeriO'Brien.com.
Do you want to help the Teri O'Brien Show stay on the air? It's simple. Just start your Amazon.com shopping at TeriO'Brien.com by clicking on the Amazon Gold Box Editors Picks banner at the top of the page. That's TeriO'Brien.com. Then the show will get a small percentage of what you spend at no additional cost to you. It's a win-win. Teri, producer Thomas, and the K9 associate producers thank you very much. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Thomas Jefferson. You're listening to Informed America Radio.
Teri's book, The ABCs of Barack Obama, Understanding God's Greatest Gift to America, is available on Amazon.com, Smashwords.com, and the iBook store. Get yours today.
She's like a fist inside a velvet glove, softly shattering left-wing stupidity. The Teri O'Brien Show, proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network.
Red State Talk Radio.
The Talk Monster.
So I didn't ask for extensions, and people couldn't believe it. The only reason I tell you is that's the kind of thinking our country needs to make us great again and rich again and strong again and solvent and all of these things. I mean, we have, as an example, with China, we have political hacks. They're political hacks that are negotiating, and we have a trade deficit with China of 305. Well, actually, it used to be. It's now actually, I heard just this morning, it's more accurate, number 5. Listen to this, $505 billion. We have a trade deficit, $505 billion. And then Obama says, our partner, China. I love China. I know everybody. These people come to me. They buy my apartments. The biggest bank in the world is from China. They're a tenant in one of my buildings in Manhattan. I mean, I do great with China. I own a big building in San Francisco along with a group. That's a great group. And we own the Bank of America building in San Francisco. Nobody even knows that. I own another one, 1290 Avenue of the Americas, through China, where I win. I mean, I had wins. That's how I got them. I beat them. I beat China. But I have wins. We got to have wins. We don't win. Our country doesn't win anymore. So I tell you that only because that's the kind of thinking we have. Because we have people that are real stiffs. We have people that should never be doing what they're doing. Should never.
Donald Trump from this morning, Sunday, January 24th, 2016, at a campaign event in Muscatine, Iowa, here on this January 24th, 2016 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. You know, you can hear this show anytime on demand, right, at TeriO'Brien.com. You can also listen on the go. If you have your smartphone, let's say you go to the gym with your smartphone. You guys realize that if you go to the Stitcher app and just go to your App Store, whichever one you have for your operating system on your device, and download Stitcher and do a search for Informed America Radio. That's the same you would do on iTunes if you wanted to do a search on iTunes. And we love iTunes comments. You know, if you like this show, it would be great if you would go to Stitcher and leave comments. You can do that at Stitcher.com on your computer. You can do that on iTunes. Do a search for Informed America Radio. You'll see all the different shows. We have, of course, the Teri O'Brien Show is the flagship show, but we also have the Caden Cowger program, America's #1 teenage conservative out of West Virginia. We also have the Machete of Truth, and his 60 Minutes of Truth used to be 30 minutes. I mentioned earlier in the program that he did an encore show last Wednesday, and I'm expecting a new show this Wednesday, although I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to him. But, you know, I will tell you, I mentioned earlier the guy that is or was my colleague at Red State Talk Radio, where this show is syndicated. And you can also hear this show there on the Red State talkradio.com website or on the app. There's also a Red State app. But I mentioned one of the guys that had done a show there had just pulled the plug on the show last week because he needed a new computer to do the show and he wasn't getting enough financial support from his audience. And I think part of the thing that happens, and maybe what is happening to the Machete, is you realize after you do this for a while, the tremendous amount of time and effort it takes to actually do a quality show that actually provides a solution for people. Because, you know, all of us here on the internet, we're here to basically solve problems for people. That's what the internet is. It's all about information. And the problem that we're trying to solve is give you the information that you're not getting from the pretend news so that you don't have to go and dig out all this stuff yourself. You can go to the show notes at TeriO'Brien.com and get all the links. You can listen to the show. You can take your smartphone to the gym, and while you're on the treadmill or the elliptical, you can listen to this show. And when you're done, you've got a lot of information that you need to be an informed citizen that you otherwise wouldn't have. But it takes a lot of time and effort to get. And I think that's kind of what happens to a lot of folks. So we're hoping the Machete will come back. If not, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to add another edition of the Teri O'Brien Show during the week. I've toyed with that. But once again, that goes back to the whole issue of increasing the subscriber base, increasing the sponsors. If you'd like to sponsor the show, certainly drop me an email at the Teri O'Brien Show at gmail.com. If you'd like to make a one-time contribution or become a monthly gifter, go to terryobrien.com. And on the right side, just to the right of the pictures of yours truly, you'll see the buttons where you can do that. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about the case for and against Donald Trump, and I've been playing for you all this audio, and I think it's very clear what the case for Mr. Trump is. He's not a member of what Ted Cruz calls the Washington cartel. He's never been involved in making any of these deals that have given Obama everything he wants. He doesn't hesitate to be politically incorrect and to speak the truth, regardless of what it is. He's not cowed by the left. The left has played a very great little game over the last at least 50 years where they get control of the language and they bully and intimidate people into speaking the truth by expressing feigned outrage. I mentioned this commie mayor of New York early this morning on ABC expressing his feigned outrage over Donald Trump, talking about how he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't make any difference. And, how could Donald Trump not be serious about the scourge of gun violence? And it's like, hey, Pinhead, it's a joke. Can't you take a joke? No, they can't. And a lot of times they aren't not taking a joke. They're using this outrage as a way to chill any speech or any truth that they don't want anybody to speak. And so so Donald Trump doesn't play that game. He doesn't care. And the other thing we mentioned is he's not in anyone's pocket. He doesn't owe anybody. He's using his own money. So, let me play you a little soundbite from C-SPAN. I think I played you this once before. I'm not sure, but take a listen. This was from last month on C-SPAN.
Why not wait until the Democratic voters actually go out and vote and see what they want? If I had a choice today between Hillary Clinton, if I had a gun to my head and it was between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I would vote for Donald Trump.
Really?
Because Donald Trump is not in the bag for corporations. Hillary Clinton is a corporate Democrat, which is just as bad as a Republican.
Okay. Elise from Warren, Ohio. Thanks for the...
Elise from Warren, Ohio, on C-SPAN last month here on the Teri O'Brien Show, saying what a lot of people are saying. That, Hillary is in the pocket of Wall Street. All these other guys are in the pocket of whoever their contributors are. Donald Trump is not. Okay. So those are all the things that people look to when they talk about supporting Donald Trump. You might have other things that you want to say. Say them if you're listening live, 5 to 7 p.m. on Sunday, January 24th, 2016. Say them in the chat room, and I'll share them with the audience, or say them at terryobrien.com, either by leaving a voicemail by clicking on the little tab on the right, or posting a comment in the show notes that we post after every program. We post the show notes in which we put all the articles we talk about, once again, because our goal is to provide you information without you guys having to go look it up. And you can post a comment there on what you think Donald Trump's appeal is, if any. Or maybe you are totally on the other side and you think Donald Trump is a complete vulgarian with absolutely no appeal whatsoever. You can't stand him. You think he's a blowhard. You think he's a phony. You think he's an egomaniac. You're looking at stories like this one from last year. This one's in Politico. Trump has spent years courting Hillary and other Dems. Story by Nick Gass, Gass. Donald Trump jumped into the crowded and rowdy Republican field on Tuesday. So this is right after he announced. But the business magnate has astutely played both sides of the aisle for years and has been especially cozy financially and personally with Hillary Clinton. Clinton, the Democrat frontrunner and former New York senator who had some say over the policy that could have impacted Trump's vast business dealings, received donations from both him and his son Donald Jr. on separate occasions in 2002, 2005, 2006, and 2007, according to state and federal disclosure records. Trump has also been generous with the Clinton Foundation, donating at least $100,000. Okay. And of course, he attended Donald Trump's 2005 wedding to Melania at the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach. And also he's donated to other Democrats. He's donated actually to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. Did you guys know that? And to the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee. And he's also donated to the Chicago Mayor, Rahm Emanuel. Okay, so now, of course, he has a large building in Chicago. This is how things are done in Chicago. We don't want nobody sent, right? That's sort of the motto. So this is what he would say in response. But many of you may say, no, this guy is a big phony, number one. Number two, maybe he is in cahoots with Hillary. Maybe he's her friend. He's hoping to destroy any real effective conservative, somebody like a Ted Cruz, who is actually a very articulate, passionate, committed conservative. Nobody can cast any aspersions against his conservative credentials or his intelligence or his debating skills, certainly. And maybe the idea is get rid of people like that so that Hillary can waltz right into the White House. So that, perhaps you feel along those lines. And you think the whole thing, you're with the people at the National Review. The whole thing is fake. And also, by the way, Donald Trump is no conservative. Well, I have to agree with that. I mean, at least in terms of being an ideological conservative. But one thing that I think people forget in this country sometimes, at least people that are political junkies who watch all these shows or who listen to this show where I watch so you don't have to, and you read a lot of things, and you might be a true believer in the conservative cause. But one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is the vast majority of people in this country are not ideological. In fact, even though a lot of them live their lives in a very conservative way, a lot of them would be horrified if you called them conservatives because they don't think of themselves that way. And so to a lot of these folks, they don't give a damn if he's not a conservative. I mean, I know it matters to Rich Lowry and all those people at the National Review. I know that it matters to them. And it matters to me. I like to see an actual committed conservative. But for the vast majority of people, certainly the vast majority of people supporting Donald Trump, if you say to them, this guy's not a conservative, they're going to say, so what? Gee, was Mitt Romney a conservative? Didn't the National Review, I know they endorsed Mitt Romney in 2008, and I believe they endorsed him in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. I tweeted Rich Lowry this. He hasn't responded, and that tells me they probably did. I looked it up. I wasn't able to find anything definitive. What I did find suggested that they did endorse Mitt Romney. Was Mitt Romney the severe conservative? Was he really a conservative? The guy that the Democrats were dying to run against because having him as our nominee made it impossible to raise any objections to Obamacare because of Romney Care. That guy, that's a conservative. 2008, they endorsed John McCain. Was he a conservative? Seriously? That's the thing. We have folks that have told us we should support people in the past who are not conservative. Now, suddenly, this guy comes along, and one of their big objections is he's not a conservative. Well, that's true. But neither were these other people. So, where's the distinction? Is it that he is above the fray in the sense that he's not owned by anybody and he's not part of the club and he doesn't care about being politically correct? Is that why? That a lot of the East Coast brain rot afflicted don't like him? I don't know. Maybe for some of you, you'll say, you know what? I can't support someone like this. He's not a conservative. I think he's a phony. I think he might be in cahoots with Hillary, and he's given up a lot of money to Democrats. So, end of story. So I don't know. I'll leave it to you. I've not endorsed anyone yet. But I will say one thing in favor of Donald Trump, that the fact that he raised the issue of illegal immigration and secondarily the issue of seeding, and SEEDING, this country with these refugees, so-called, these economic migrants from these jihadist hotbeds, I give him major propers for that. Because I've said before, I'll say again, I'm not a single issue voter, but I believe that those issues and the issue of the desire by the Democrats to radically transform the demographics of this country and to change the country by changing the people and therefore ensure their electoral victories for decades is an existential issue. And so the fact that he made that issue a prominent one in the election, I think we owe him a debt of gratitude, regardless of what else you may think of him. Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back, close out this hour of the program, and then we're going to talk about Hillary's problems. Yeah, and I am going to talk about the case against Ted Cruz, because I did say I would explain to you why I have so much trouble endorsing him, even though he is a passionate, brilliant, articulate, conservative voice who has stood on principle, which I greatly admire. All that and more here in the second hour of the Teri O'Brien Show. I'll be right back.
This is Cheryl Atkinson, and you're listening to the Teri O'Brien Show.
I'm a good person. I never bothered anybody. But I can't afford a nice house in a safe neighborhood. I live in a government high-rise. Gangbangers and drug dealers walk down our halls every day. My neighbors and I were scared. We called the police, but they can't keep us safe. Some of us are too afraid to even leave our apartments. But the housing authority told me if I bought a gun to protect myself, they'd throw me to the streets. If I'm not free because of my address today, what makes you think you'll be free tomorrow? I marched behind Martin Luther King at Selma. I know my rights. Now I have my gun. I am the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Where do you want to go to lunch? I'm having a stroke. Did you hear what I said? I'm having a stroke. Why aren't you answering me? I'm having a stroke.
What's up with your face?
I'm having a stroke.
That's not normal. Is something wrong?
I'm having a stroke.
Are you having an allergic reaction?
I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear.
I'm having a stroke.
You just need to know the sudden signs. Look for FAST, F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. Or S, speech difficulty. Then T, time. Time to call 911 immediately, because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Know the sudden signs. Face, arm, speech, time. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
So, I'm a dog, and I'm kind of new to this family, but I've noticed a trend. My humans do this thing where they go around and get all my toys and hide them in this basket, but it's always the same basket, and it's always the same place, and then they act so surprised when I find them, but I'm like, hello, that's where you put it last time. Humans are the worst at hide and go seek.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
All right, listen up, maggots, because I have something to say that you might want to hear. It's for every man 18 through 25 years old. Now, you want to live in my United States of America? Then you have got to register with Selective Service. It's a privilege, and it's the law. The fact is, you must register before you can qualify for student loans, most federal jobs, or job training. Now, you say you want to be a U.S. citizen? Well, get with the program. You've got to be registered to qualify. Now, Charlie tells me that we need to go online at sss.gov or fill out a Selective Service registration form at any post office. You did that already? Outstanding! You've earned my respect. Hoorah!
Register with Selective Service online at sss.gov or at the post office.
It's the law.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
At highway speeds, the average text takes your eyes off the road for about 5 seconds. That's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop texts. StopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Informed America Radio.
Ready for more hot girl on government action? The Teri O'Brien Show.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Live in vivid red, white, and blue. Every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time. Or on demand, anytime, at TeriO'Brien.com.
So I look at this stuff, and I see what's happening, and I look at Ted, and I say, wait a minute, I put in this report, and all of these people that for the National Review, they were all saying I wasn't going to run, I wasn't going to file, I'd never filed financials, you know. And by the way, when I filed my financials, it looked like Grand Central Terminal in front of the Federal Elections Commission with reporters. Oh, they were going to get me, they were going to get me. So what did I get instead? Ted Cruz with a couple of pages. He forgot to say that Goldman Sachs gave him money. He forgot to say that Citibank gave him money. Okay? Because he's a man of the people. He's Robin Hood, right? He's this great man of the people, even though nobody likes him, even though no senators endorsed him, even though all of this. And he's a nasty guy. He's a man of the people. He's going to help the people. Well, he doesn't want to know that he borrowed from Goldman Sachs because, let me tell you, Goldman Sachs has him. Citibank has him. Okay, he's going to come out with rulings that are negative at Goldman Sachs, and he's got personal guarantees with Goldman Sachs? I don't think so. So he said, oh, he didn't know. He didn't know. Oh, I didn't know. You know, guy's got 2 banks. He's got 2 loans. I may have more than that, but let's assume he has 2 banks, 2 loans. How do you not put that on your personal disclosure form? How do you not put it? It's impossible. Smart guy. So you know that you have banks and you didn't put them. He didn't put them because he didn't want you people to know that Goldman Sachs, that he owes money to him and that he's got guarantees to Goldman Sachs and that he's got loans at way below interest. He's got very low interest rate loans. It's called favored nations loans. He's got low interest rate loans.
Donald Trump from this morning in Muscatine, Iowa, at a campaign rally here on the Teri O'Brien Show. Thanks for joining me today. All right, so now I know a lot of you out there are huge Ted Cruz fans. I love Ted Cruz as well. I love his speeches. I love his passion. I love his willingness to stand up for principle, even if everybody else is bashing him, demonizing him, as they did back in 2013 when he stood up against Obamacare. I love all of that. So I don't want you to take the fact that I'm playing these Trump sound bites to mean that I don't believe all those things. But, I mean, you did hear Donald Trump there present part of the case against Ted Cruz. The fact that he has these loans, that's a problem. Another problem, frankly, that I saw on prominent display last night at a Ted Cruz rally in Iowa that I was watching on C-SPAN. Yeah, I watched so you don't have to. And he had this ex-DJ, this refugee from a morning zoo, the guy who wanted to give out candy and soccer balls to the invading army of Central American children, one Glenn Beck up there. And you know Glenn Beck is supporting him. He hates Donald Trump. And I got to be honest, I'm not a Glenn Beck fan, but I think even if you are a Glenn Beck fan, I think you would have to be a little bit taken aback by what happened last night in Iowa, where Glenn Beck spent over an hour talking when he was supposed to be there for Ted Cruz. I thought it was really an incredible display of narcissism and ego on the part of Glenn Beck. No surprise, being an ex-DJ lightweight. It was hilarious to hear Glenn Beck talk about how he never endorsed anybody before. Oh, yeah, you mean people aren't clamoring for the endorsement of somebody who used to be the host of a morning zoo, who admits he didn't know anything about politics till he was over 40 years old? I mean, it's great if you never heard of Saul Alinsky until he told you, but to those of us who read all that stuff as undergraduates, it really wasn't very impressive. And, the crying is not impressive. Anyway, Donald Trump said this morning during that same rally that Glenn Beck was mad because Trump wouldn't go on his show. I don't know if that's true. But there's another bigger problem with Ted Cruz, and it's a big problem, one that I have been demonized for raising in the past. We'll get into it in the next hour. Hillary's problems, dreamers, economic migrants in Germany, a preview of coming attractions here in the U.S., all that and more in the second big hour of this edition of The Teri O'Brien Show. I'll be right back.
We just want to say that we're not spirit bunnies anymore. We always hated that name. It bugged the heck out of Dina and me. It's just such a put down. Really. We know you've got a lot of spirit, everybody, right? And we're going to destroy Lincoln next week, all right? It takes a lot of courage to get up here and do something that you know people will make fun of.
Ooh, what a girl. She's always in a whirl. Always going new places, seeing new faces. That girl on the go.
Teri O'Brien.
Wonderful girl on the go.
Sorry.
I'm so happy you're part of this.
In front of Bridge of Hi, Secretary Clinton. Will you release a transcript of your paid speeches to Goldman Sachs? No, there's a lot of controversy over their speeches. Secretary. Is that a no? Secretary Clinton. Will you release a transcript of your Goldman Sachs speeches? Yes.
Hillary Clinton, a couple of days ago, asked by a reporter if she would release the transcripts of her speeches that she gets paid a lot of money for, hundreds of thousands of dollars, here on this Sunday, January 24th, 2016 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show. Now, did you notice something in there? Hillary has what I would call a tell. This is it. Yeah, when the cackle comes out, that's when you know you have hit pay dirt when it comes to Mrs. Clinton. That cackle is definitely a tell. And I am going to share with you in a few minutes, her legal problems are just getting worse and worse. Now, last night on a show that almost nobody watches, but remember, Teri O'Brien, watch so you don't have to, right? The McLaughlin Group on PBS, and both Clarence Page, the liberal Chicago Tribune columnist, and the host John McLaughlin both agreed that the FBI will make a referral and recommend that she be indicted. Now, whether the regime will indict her or not, I don't know, but we're going to get into that. But before we do, let's have closure on this whole Cruz-Trump thing. I mentioned the case for Ted Cruz is very compelling in terms of his being a passionate, committed, principled conservative who is willing to stand up to the establishment and has the scars to show it. And I admire him greatly. Alan Dershowitz, the liberal law professor, says he's the smartest student he ever had. I don't doubt that. He's a brilliant debater. But I mentioned earlier, one problem I really have is this Glenn Beck thing. I am not a fan of Glenn Beck, and seeing him last night at that rally just reinforced all the negative impressions I have of him. I think he is a clown. He's an ex-DJ, refugee from a morning zoo. He spends way too much time crying. And for him to go last night at this rally for Cruz, where he's supposed to introduce him and not only spend over an hour talking and not saying anything, by the way, but then after Cruz is finally introduced, Glenn Beck comes back and interrupts him. It's like, oh, I didn't have enough time. An hour wasn't enough. Okay, so that's a problem for me. But that's trivial. I can overlook that. I could definitely overlook that. But what I can't overlook is the thing that has been sticking in my craw for over 5 years, that I have been writing about, that many of you know I have been writing about, with respect to Barack Obama. And of course, that is the whole issue of Article 2, and whether or not the person running for office is qualified as being an Article 2 natural-born citizen. Now, let's go over this again for those of you who may not have heard me talk about this a million times. Article 2 is the only place in the Constitution where the framers actually use the phrase natural-born citizen. So it's not the same as being an American citizen. So fact one, that phrase is used only there. Okay. Fact number two, it's true. It's not a matter of settled law what that phrase means. When Donald Trump says it's not a matter of settled law because Lawrence Tribe says that, it's true. It's not a matter of settled law. We'll talk about some of the different interpretations in a minute, but that's another fact. It's just not a matter of settled law. Fact number three, it's not the same thing as being an American citizen. I get so tired of having people try to respond to my objections that Ted Cruz is not an Article 2 natural-born citizen or Barack Obama is not an Article 2 natural-born citizen. I don't think either one of them are. But I'm tired of having people respond by saying, well, he's an American citizen. Well, I don't dispute that. So are anchor babies, something that we need to change, obviously. But they're citizens as well. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm talking about being qualified to be president under Article 2. Okay, so that's not the same thing. So people that try to conflate those things, nice try, but not true. And I submit to all of you that as we look at the lawlessness of the Obama regime, and we see just the gangster government, the pen and phone dictatorship that we have suffered under these last 7 years, I submit to you that all the lawlessness started with the initial lawlessness of allowing someone who is not an Article 2 natural-born citizen to hold the office of president. That should never have happened, and there's no question about it. And, there's a doctrine in law, in criminal law. Now, this is not exactly right on point, but just bear with me here. There's a doctrine in the criminal law called the fruit of the poisonous tree. Well, what the heck is that? That's a doctrine from criminal law that says if you violate the Fourth Amendment to obtain evidence against someone, any evidence that results as an additional bit of evidence that flows from that initial lawlessness is disqualified, is excluded. And I think in some ways that's what we can say about this natural-born citizen thing, that if we're going to allow someone like Barack Obama to sit in the Oval Office in violation of what the founders intended, then how can we be surprised when that person turns out to be a dictator? Now, obviously, not everybody agrees with me. In fact, I would say my position is a minority position, and I've heard several people, and many people that I respect. I've talked about this before. My friend Andrew McCarthy, who is a very bright attorney who I respect very much, doesn't agree with me. But the thing, I don't mind if people don't agree with me about this, but one thing I really object to, and I mentioned this earlier in the program when I was talking about Donald Trump and how some people don't even want any analysis or criticism of him or any of his positions. When people tell me, you can't even talk about this. It's settled. It's over. What are you doing? Are you a nut? Are you a crackpot? Basically, I heard a conservative who I think a lot of you would respect if I told you who this person was. Okay, it's Mark Levin. I heard him say recently that we have a 10% problem. We have 10% of people who are crackpots, basically. And he based that on a Fox News poll that said only 10% of the people care about the issue of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, the Natural Born Citizen Clause. Okay, you can disagree. You could be like Andy McCarthy, but you don't have to characterize people as crackpots and say that you refuse to discuss whether or not the issue is real or not. I'm not saying it's going to make any difference. I mean, once Obama has been sitting in there squatting in the Oval Office, I guess the question is, though, do we want to be as lawless and spit on the founders the way the Democrats did? I will tell you, last week in Maricopa County, Arizona, where I'm from, actually, home of Joe Arpaio, the Republican GOP committee voted down a requirement to put on their ballot a natural-born citizen. They voted this down. There was a resolution, and it said, whereas U.S. Declaration of Independence strongly guided by, quote, laws of nature and nature's God, unquote, whereas it is understood in and of itself, natural law, Emmerich de Vitel's Law of Nations, 1758, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 212, and I will put this link to this article in the show notes, so don't worry, you don't have to look it up, you'll have it here. Quote, natural-born citizens are those born in the country of parents who are citizens, strongly guided founders, framers. Natural-born citizen means person born in U.S. to two U.S. citizen parents. And that's what I think. But obviously, as I've been saying for 5 years, not everybody thinks that, or Obama would not be in office. Whereas, first Supreme Court Chief Justice John Jay, appointed by the first President, Commander-in-Chief George Washington, recommended, quote, natural-born citizen, unquote, directly to Washington, quote, strong check to admission of foreigners into administration of our national government, unquote, ultimately passing unanimously at the Constitutional Convention, whereas 7 related Supreme Court rulings confirm this understanding, and they give the years here, but they don't give the case citations, whereas U.S. State Department affirms this understanding never being interpreted differently, altered by any court, whereas the Constitution mandates strongest possible safeguard, American through and through, serving as President, Commander-in-Chief of, by, and for we the people, whereas answer to the question, how foreign is too foreign, is anything foreign is too foreign, whereas Washington's farewell address, quote, if we remain one people, why forego the advantages? Why quit upon our own to stand upon foreign ground? Why interweave our destiny? Why entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of foreign ambition? Let there be no change by usurpation. Whereas we the people rise up, restore the Constitution, take back, keep the Republic given us, therefore be it resolved, Maricopa County Republican Committee hereby commits to the original understanding of natural-born citizen in its official activities. And that was rejected. So that requirement in Maricopa County was rejected. Now, was that rejected because they want Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz? Probably. But I guess the question is naked political calculation the standard we should apply here? And isn't there some irony in saying like, oh, Ted Cruz is this tremendously principled constitutionalist, but then to say, well, yes, but if we want him as our guy, then we have to pretty much sacrifice that requirement. So, people can characterize me as a crackpot. They can tell me I have to shut up and not talk about this, which, in fact, when people tell you you can't talk about something, that's all the more reason you should talk about it. I will also tell you that there has been a challenge filed in the state of Illinois by a Ben Carson supporter who's challenging whether Ted Cruz could be on the ballot. And, of course, the really insane Florida Congressman Grayson, who's his name? Alan Grayson. He has promised to file a lawsuit if Ted Cruz is the nominee. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, he's a great guy. He's a principled, passionate, articulate, brilliant conservative. But is he constitutionally eligible? And if he's not, then do all of those other things matter? Now, frankly, if I had not been born on American soil, I would never have even contemplated running for president. Let me see. Where is the other piece of info I wanted to read you? We do know that the Washington Post, the WAPO, by the way, has said we just need to get rid of the whole natural-born citizen requirement. Well, that's not a shock. The New York Times says we need to resolve it. But I think some people would say it's already resolved. People have brought to my attention the case of Rogers v. Belli, which is a 1970 case. And this is a case that involved a statute about U.S. citizenship. In that particular case, if I recall the facts, the person involved was born in Italy of an American mother and an Italian father. There was a requirement in the statute that the person seeking citizenship had to live in the U.S. for 5 continuous years from the ages 14 to 28. And this guy did not fit that requirement. And so what this case is about is what it takes to be a citizen. But the reason people think it's relevant to the case of Ted Cruz is basically it says a person born out of the jurisdiction of the U.S. can only become a citizen by being naturalized, either by treaty in the case of annexation of foreign territory or by the authority of Congress, exercised either by declaring certain classes of persons to be citizens, as in the enactments conferring citizenship upon foreign-born children of citizens. So basically Congress has, an absolute authority under Article 1 to decide who are citizens. And in this particular case, they circumscribe these qualifications. This guy didn't meet it. He's out the door. But the reason this is relevant is because those who argue that if you are born on foreign soil to an American parent, that you are a natural-born citizen, say that the reason that's true is that a natural-born citizen, under their very loose definition, means somebody who doesn't have to be naturalized. And what this case is saying is that a person born out of the country is naturalized by Congress, by act of Congress, and therefore can never be a natural-born citizen, even under the most liberal, loose definition. And so that's the case of Rogers v. Belli. So I'll link to this in the show notes. You guys can take a look. I don't have any idea how this is going to be resolved. I do know, and Barack Obama is the textbook example of this. If people want something in this country, the courts are not going to stop it. This is viewed as a complete political decision. Political question doctrine, the courts call it. And if the left has been so successful in their 100-year-long campaign to dumb down the population about the Constitution that people don't care, and based on this Fox News poll that says only 10% of Republicans care, then maybe that's in fact the case. And those of us who are saying it does matter, we're just, crackpots. But that doesn't mean I can endorse somebody who's not a natural-born citizen. I'll be right back.
She's America's original conservative warrior princess, daring to fearlessly and, more importantly, cheerfully commit common sense in the age of Obama.
You're different from other girls. That's what you think. You're smarter. You're almost like a man.
You're listening to The Teri O'Brien Show.
Michael Bloomberg and his anti-gun group Mayors Against Illegal Guns recently launched a multi-million-dollar ad campaign featuring this curious gun owner.
For me, guns are for hunting and protecting my family. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'll fight to protect it. But with rights come responsibilities. That's why I support comprehensive background checks.
We've asked Mayors Against Illegal Guns for his identity, but so far, no luck. Every gun owner watching probably noticed the closed bolt, the finger dangerously close to the trigger, and the direction the gun is pointing, which, particularly in the presence of children, is not responsible firearms handling. We have to assume that the gun is loaded, and that this quote-unquote gun owner is not as familiar with firearms as he would have us believe. The NRA recommends Mayor Bloomberg use some of his money to sign this man up for one of our industry standard firearm courses. Is it possible he's an actor?
Me, a cat, moving in with a single guy. At first, I thought it might be a little weird, but turns out it's actually pretty amusing. For instance, like my human's gotten so used to me being around, sometimes I think he forgets I'm here. He'll get up for work, shower, shave, and come out with no pants. Plops right down in front of the TV. Hello, there's a lady in the room.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Carrying concealed isn't for everyone. It definitely wasn't for me up until a few years ago. My name is Kimberly Weeks, and I can tell you that violent crimes do happen. My apartment in college was fairly close to campus. We were on a ground floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, very safe. When we signed our lease, they said, we have absolutely 0 crime reports that have happened here. It's a very safe neighborhood. In the early morning hours of May 12th, 2006, I was awakened by a stranger who was holding me down with a shirt covering my face. And he was saying, "Shut up. Don't say anything. Just stay quiet." He stayed in my apartment for the next 2 hours and sexually assaulted me. And at 20 years old, I had to lay there thinking about how I was going to die. Law enforcement in my case was fantastic, but they were there after the crime was committed. I would say that my fear of guns disappeared when I got my second chance at my life. Protecting myself is my right. Michael Bloomberg would like to say that he is doing this to make everyone safer. Unfortunately, Michael Bloomberg is not making me safer. If my right to self-protection is taken away, that leaves me very, very vulnerable and feeling very scared once again. I know how best to defend myself. Mr. Bloomberg, you do not have the right to tell me how to defend myself.
Sassy! Sassy!
This week's episode, Fire at the Shed.
Gee, Johnny, this rope swing sure is swell. Don't I know it? Hey, it's Sassy! I think she's trying to tell us something. Mr. Gunderson? What about Mr. Gunderson? A fire? Mr. Gunderson's trapped? Where, Sassy, where? What, Sassy? Now that you've got our attention, you'd like to take a moment to talk about shelter pets? Shelter pets in general are well-adjusted, healthy, and love being with people? Sassy, we don't have time! Pets often end up in shelters due to owner problems like divorce or allergies? That's great, Sassy, but what about the fire? There is no fire! You're just messing with our heads? Sassy!
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
Do you want to help the Terry O'Brien Show stay on the air? It's simple. Just start your Amazon.com shopping at TerryO'Brien.com by clicking on the Amazon Gold Box Editors Picks banner at the top of the page. That's TerioBrien.com. Then the show will get a small percentage of what you spend at no additional cost to you. It's a win-win. Terry, producer Thomas, and the K9 associate producers thank you very much.
Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Martin Luther King. You're listening to Informed America Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
Broadcasting from a secured bunker in an undisclosed location in flyover country, outside the East Coast bubble and far from left coast insanity. You're listening to America's original warrior princess, Teri O'Brien. Learn more at TerryO'Brien.com.
The Daily Caller reported earlier this week that a group of emails that they obtained under a lawsuit showed that then State Department Executive Secretary Stephen Mull, after being informed that Secretary Clinton's private BlackBerry had failed a number of times, proposed providing her with a State Department issued BlackBerry, and that would have various kinds of protection so that it would continue working and so on. And it in his note he said that the official BlackBerry would mask her identity, but would be subject to FOIA requests. And the emails that they say they've obtained show Homa Abedin, the former secretary's deputy chief of staff, is saying that giving the secretary a state-issued BlackBerry equipped with a state.gov email address, quote, doesn't make a lot of sense, close quote. My question is, why, from an institutional point of view, would it not make sense for the Secretary of State to have an official BlackBerry from the State Department with an email address, with a state.gov email address that was believed to be more reliable than the personal email address and device that former Secretary Clinton was using? Why doesn't that make sense from an institutional point of view?
Question from an unnamed reporter to Mark Toner, the State Department spokesman here on the Terry O'Brien Show. So basically, what this is about is the fact that the Daily Caller has learned that an offer was made at some point for Hillary to get a government-issued BlackBerry that would be secure, and that Homa Abedin rejected that idea. And the reason they rejected it is because they didn't want Hillary's email to be subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. So apparently, as you're going to hear that, you'll hear the answer in a minute. The State Department and the Inspector General there are investigating that whole situation. Let's hear the answer, and I'll tell you more.
Sure, and you're probably not going to be very satisfied with my answer, but I hope you can respect the fact that I'm aware of the article. I'm aware of these emails. I can't speak to the content of them, or make a judgment, or offer really an opinion, even an institutional one, over what was said or not said in them. Given that, as I said, there's other investigations, reviews, looking at some of these questions. So, we obviously take our responsibilities under the Freedom of Information Act very seriously. We're looking at getting these emails out. I can't address your questions because of these reviews, because of these investigations or inquiries underway. I don't want to get ahead of them. I would just simply note that Secretary Kerry himself has asked the Inspector General to look at some of these matters last March, and we've worked closely with the OIG, and it's on this review. We welcome its findings once it comes out with them. But I just don't want to get ahead of those investigations.
State Department spokesman Mark Toner here on the Teri O'Brien Show responding to a question about the fact that Hillary Clinton had the opportunity to use a secure government-issued BlackBerry, but rejected that idea when she found out that her email would be subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. And this Daily Caller article that, of course, I will link to in the show notes at TeriO'Brien.com, TeriO'Brien.com. You just have to go there. All the articles are there. Says that earlier this month, the State Department it was discovered in a report that was released that the State Department provided, quote, inaccurate and incomplete, quote, responses to Freedom of Information Act requests for Clinton's emails. In one of those cases, Cheryl Mills, Clinton's chief of staff, was made aware of the request in December 2012 for information about Clinton's email accounts, but failed to flag her boss's account for a state's Freedom of Information office. Clinton never did use a government-issued BlackBerry while at the State Department, opting instead for a personal device. The State Department has admitted in court hearings that Clinton was never issued a BlackBerry, but has never publicly acknowledged that an offer was made to provide one or that her aides nixed the idea. The fact that Clinton never received a government-issued device suggested that she sided with Abedin on this issue. So, you've got this little cabal, this little coven. You've got Huma, and you've got Cheryl Mills, who you might remember from the Clinton impeachment. She was one of Clinton's defense attorneys. So we've got that going on. Let's see. That's one story about Hillary's deepening legal problems. Here's another one. We know that last week we got the explosive disclosure that Hillary had even higher security level email than top secret on her private server. And I guess, a lot of us were prompted at that point to ask, how much blood does this woman want on her hands? Well, now, today, the New York Post reports, story by Paul Sperry, Hillary's team copied intel off top secret server to email. The FBI is investigating whether members of Hillary Clinton's inner circle, quote, cut and pasted, unquote, material from the government's classified network so that it could be sent to her private email address, former State Department security officials say. Clinton and her top aides had access to a Pentagon-run classified network that goes up to the Secret Service, up to the secret level, as well as separate system used for top secret communication. So, these servers and these methods of communication are very restricted to people like the Secretary of State, the President, the Vice President, even members of Congress. A lot of times cannot look at this stuff. The two systems, the Secret Internet Protocol Router Network and Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication Systems, are not connected to the unclassified system known as the Top Classified Internet Protocol Router Network. You cannot email from one system to the other, although you can use the non-classified one to send emails outside the government. Somehow, highly classified information from the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, as well as even the super secure Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communications System, jumped from those closed systems to the open system and turned up in at least 1,340 of Clinton's home emails, including several the CIA earlier this month flagged as containing ultra-secret, sensitive, compartmented information and special access programs. Special access programs includes, quote, dark projects such as drone operations, while the SCI protects intelligence sources and methods. So that could endanger the lives of our operatives. So this is just being reported today. It says FBI agents are zeroing in on 3 of Clinton's top department aides. Most of the Clinton emails deemed classified by intelligence agency reviewers were sent to her by Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills, here we go again, or Deputy Chiefs Huma Abedin and Jake Sullivan. So these people are the ones who are in jeopardy. Now, will Hillary just throw them under the bus and let them go to prison and say she knew nothing about it? It's going to be very interesting. Stay tuned.
She's America's original conservative warrior princess, daring to fearlessly and, more importantly, cheerfully commit common sense in the age of Obama.
You're different from other girls. That's what you think. You're smarter. You're almost like a man.
You're listening to The Teri O'Brien Show.
Michael Bloomberg and his anti-gun group Mayors Against Illegal Guns recently launched a multi-million-dollar ad campaign featuring this curious gun owner.
For me, guns are for hunting and protecting my family. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'll fight to protect it. But with rights come responsibilities. That's why I support comprehensive background checks.
We've asked Mayors Against Illegal Guns for his identity, but so far, no luck. Every gun owner watching probably noticed the closed bolt, the finger dangerously close to the trigger, and the direction the gun is pointing, which, particularly in the presence of children, is not responsible firearms handling. We have to assume that the gun is loaded, and that this quote-unquote gun owner is not as familiar with firearms as he would have us believe. The NRA recommends Mayor Bloomberg use some of his money to sign this man up for one of our industry standard firearm courses. Is it possible he's an actor?
Me, a cat, moving in with a single guy. At first, I thought it might be a little weird, but turns out it's actually pretty amusing. For instance, like my human's gotten so used to me being around, sometimes I think he forgets I'm here. He'll get up for work, shower, shave, and come out with no pants. Plops right down in front of the TV. Hello, there's a lady in the room.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Carrying concealed isn't for everyone. It definitely wasn't for me up until a few years ago. My name is Kimberly Weeks, and I can tell you that violent crimes do happen. My apartment in college was fairly close to campus. We were on a ground floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, very safe. When we signed our lease, they said, we have absolutely 0 crime reports that have happened here. It's a very safe neighborhood. In the early morning hours of May 12th, 2006, I was awakened by a stranger who was holding me down with a shirt covering my face. And he was saying, "Shut up. Don't say anything. Just stay quiet." He stayed in my apartment for the next 2 hours and sexually assaulted me. And at 20 years old, I had to lay there thinking about how I was going to die. Law enforcement in my case was fantastic, but they were there after the crime was committed. I would say that my fear of guns disappeared when I got my second chance at my life. Protecting myself is my right. Michael Bloomberg would like to say that he is doing this to make everyone safer. Unfortunately, Michael Bloomberg is not making me safer. If my right to self-protection is taken away, That leaves me very, very vulnerable and feeling very scared once again. I know how best to defend myself. Mr. Bloomberg, you do not have the right to tell me how to defend myself.
Sassy! Sassy!
This week's episode, Fire at the Shed.
Gee, Johnny, this rope swing sure is swell. Don't I know it? Hey, it's Sassy!
I think she's trying to tell us something. Mr. Gunderson? What about Mr. Gunderson?
A fire? Mr. Gunderson's trapped?
Where, Sassy, where?
What, Sassy? Now that you've got our attention, you'd like to take a moment to talk about shelter pets? Shelter pets in general are well-adjusted, healthy, and love being with people?
Sassy, we don't have time!
Pets often end up in shelters due to owner problems like divorce or allergies?
That's great, Sassy, but what about the fire?
There is no fire! You're just messing with our heads?
Sassy!
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
An empty head is not really empty. It is stuffed with rubbish. Hence the difficulty of forcing anything into an empty head. Eric Hoffer. You're listening to Informed America Radio.
Teri's book, The ABCs of Barack Obama, Understanding God's Greatest Gift to America, is available on Amazon.com, Smashwords.com, and the iBook store. Get yours today.
She's like a fist inside a velvet glove, softly shattering left-wing stupidity. The Teri O'Brien Show, proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network.
Red State Talk Radio.
The Talk Monster.
She's about as hard right and at least, if not more, articulate than Limbaugh.
Well, she's popular.
There's something about this bitch that's really spectacular.
Yeah, for a popular girl, she's pretty popular.
She's about being sensible.
Well, she can make them talk about themselves, the way it says girls should do in those teenage columns.
Know-it-all, bitch. Basically, I'm in love with her. Enough! Wah!
Hey, thanks so much for joining me on this January 24th, 2016 edition of the Teri O'Brien Show. And if you're not listening live, thanks so much for listening on demand. Please spread the word about the show. One of you sent me a great note the other day and said, how can I promote the show? Basically, you can promote the show by telling your friends that what you get from this show. How this show makes it possible for you to get a lot of information that you need to be an informed citizen without having to go and dig for it yourself. And, you know, there's a ton of information everywhere. It's everywhere, but it's very difficult to cull through it all. It takes a lot of time. If you listen to this show, you don't have to do that because we do it so you don't have to. Now, though, I want to bring back something that a lot of you may remember. We haven't done this for a while, but I'd like to bring this segment back. Useful Idiot of the Week. And we've got a really good useful idiot this week. His name, well, I'll reveal that in a moment.
You are an idiot. You are an idiot. You are an idiot.
Yeah, our old buddy Flashmaster Flash there. Okay, so who is our useful idiot of the week? None other than one, speaking of the Secretary of State, John Forbes. Carrie, let's take a listen. I know you guys may have heard this, but we can hear it again and enjoy it.
If it's the least worst outcome, but just to put a fine point on it, do you believe that any of that $55 billion ends up in the hands of terrorists?
I think that some of it will end up in the hands of the IRGC or of other entities, some of which are labeled terrorist. To some degree, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every component of that can be prevented, but I can tell you this. Right now, we are not seeing the early delivery of funds going to that kind of endeavor at this point in time. Mm-hmm. I'm sure at some point some of it will, but that has never made the difference in what is happening there. Let me give you an example. The Saudis alone spend $80 billion a year on defense. The entire Gulf state community spends $130 billion a year on defense. Iran spends $15 billion a year on its military activities. So it's so incredibly disproportionate that I believe that working with our Gulf state partners, which we are going to do and which we are upgrading, we have the ability to guarantee that they will be secure, that we will stand by them, even as we look for this potential of a shift.
Is being an idiot like being high all the time?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Our brilliant Secretary of State, John Kerry, on MSNBC last week explaining that some of the money we're giving to Iran is going to end up in the hands of the people that had our sailors on their knees with their hands on their heads, humiliated. There's a terrific piece. It'll be in the show notes. New York Post. Obama just made Iran's brutal regime stronger by Amir Tahiri. And he begins, evident victory. This is how Iranian President Hassan Rouhani describes a diplomatic swindle known as the Iran nuclear deal. And he goes on to describe all the bullet points here of how Obama helped out the terror regime in Iran. He dropped demands that Iran reshape its nuclear program to make sure it can never acquire a military dimension. As head of the Iranian Atomic Energy Agency, Ali Akbar Salahi has said our nuclear project remains intact. The deal does not prevent us from doing what we were doing. He suspended a raft of sanctions and pressured the European Union and UN to do the same. He injected a badly needed $1.7 billion into the Iranian economy by releasing assets frozen under President Jimmy Carter and kept as possible compensation for Americans held hostage at different times. The cash enabled Rouhani to start paying some unpaid salaries in Iran while financing Hezbollah branches and helping the Assad regime in Syria. He released another $30 billion, enabling Rouhani to present his new budget with a reduced deficit of 14%, while increasing the military security budget yet again by 4.2%. And there's more, and we will link to this article in the show notes so you can read all of this. But just remember, all of this is done by design. This is not incompetence. This is what the regime wants to build up Iran. We come back on the other side of the break. We're going to talk about the latest outrage in Germany with the migrants. Is this a preview of coming attractions? And a charming story about one of Obama's dreamers. Oh, this is unbelievable. Be right back.
I grew up on the south side of Chicago. You know it as one of the most dangerous cities in America. I know it as something less than America, a place where the law doesn't matter. It's illegal for criminal gang members, drug dealers, and felons to even touch a gun. Chicago's politicians could clean the streets tomorrow just by enforcing that federal law. But they would rather attack the gun rights of good people than crack down on the violent criminals who terrorize them. So law-abiding Southsiders put their kids to bed to the sound of gunfire. with no hope but to pray it doesn't come closer. Chicago's injustice is America's problem. Either we fight this cancer of corruption or we pray it doesn't come closer. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
You're listening to Informed America Radio.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it. If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist. If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist. If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist.
But generally, if you look at how I've tried to govern over the last 4 years and how I'll continue to try to govern, I'm not driven by some ideological agenda. I'm a pretty practical guy, and I just want to make sure that things work. And one of the nice things about never having another election again, I will never campaign again, is I think you can rest assured that all I care about is making sure that I leave behind an America that is stronger, more prosperous, more stable, more secure than it was when I came into office.
Yeah! It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard. So you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these are actually pretty good.
You don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
You just need FeedThePig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at FeedThePig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Carrying concealed isn't for everyone. It definitely wasn't for me up until a few years ago. My name is Kimberly Weeks, and I can tell you that violent crimes do happen. My apartment in college was fairly close to campus. We were on a ground floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, very safe. When we signed our lease, they said, we have absolutely 0 crime reports that have happened here. It's a very safe neighborhood. In the early morning hours of May 12th, 2006, I was awakened by a stranger who was holding me down with a shirt covering my face. And he was saying, "Shut up. Don't say anything. Just stay quiet." He stayed in my apartment for the next 2 hours and sexually assaulted me. And at 20 years old, I had to lay there thinking about how I was going to die. Law enforcement in my case was fantastic, but they were there after the crime was committed. I would say that my fear of guns disappeared when I got my second chance at my life. Protecting myself is my right. Michael Bloomberg would like to say that he is doing this to make everyone safer. Unfortunately, Michael Bloomberg is not making me safer. If my right to self-protection is taken away, that leaves me very, very vulnerable and feeling very scared once again. I know how best to defend myself. Mr. Bloomberg, you do not have the right to tell me how to defend myself.
Sassy! Sassy!
This week's episode, Trouble on Rock Hill.
Ain't nothing like running up and down Rock Hill.
Hey, let's move this rock.
Whoa! Sassy! Johnny's stuck under that rock. Yeah, girl, go tell Mr. Gunderson to bring his truck. You'll tell him, but only after you dispel a stereotype associated with shelter pets? People think shelter pets come with lots of initial veterinary costs?
It's dusty under here.
But in reality, most shelter pets have been vaccinated, neutered, and microchipped in case they get lost?
My pants ripped.
Sassy, Johnny needs help. What Johnny really needs is more discipline and better parental supervision? You use big words, Sassy.
Still under the rock.
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
Ready for more hot girl on government action? The Terry O'Brien Show, live in vivid red, white, and blue. Every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time. Or on demand, anytime, at TerryO'Brien.com.
Everyone who wants to do good to the human race always ends in universal bullying. Aldous Huxley. You're listening to Informed America Radio.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator. Now, honestly, I will do my best to answer your questions about this, but the fact is that people were trying in real time to get to the best information.
Ah, there she is. Can you believe the 3rd anniversary of that just passed? Very interesting. Okay, I want to talk about this dreamer, but before I do, I want to just share from the Daily Mail a story from today. Gang of migrants arrested after sexually assaulting women and masturbating in historic German swimming baths. And I suggest you go to TerryO'Brien.com, and I will link at the show notes. But I posted yesterday how the Germans have decided to combat this rape jihad with a bunch of cartoons showing like a woman walking and some guy putting his hand on her ass with like a line drawn through it. I'm not optimistic that that's going to work. But back to this story. Migrants have been Migrants have been banned from a historic swimming bath in Germany after a gang of men were caught on camera masturbating in a hot tub and sexually assaulting children and women. Several other men were seen emptying their bowels in the children's end of the main swimming pool at the Johannesbad baths in Zwickau, Saxony. And I said sexually assaulting children. No, sexually assaulting women, emptying their bowels in the children's end of the swimming pool. Management at the historic baths are reportedly no longer allowing migrants into the facilities, following the allegations, while some local swimmers have stayed away. Gee, I can't imagine why. So is that a preview of coming attractions here as the regime continues to remake America by seeding the country with the people that won't assimilate? I'm wondering. So this is a story from Mesa, Arizona, about a 3-year-old child. Here's one headline. Mesa PD, bound child found in bag of feces shocks the soul. And this is a story about a woman named Myra Somali Solis and her good friend Francisco Javier Rios Cavaburias. I don't think I pronounced that right. Hold on, let me take a look at this story where it's spelled out a little better. Covarrubias. Francisco Rios Covarrubias. And he was her babysitter And he was also a cross-dressing prostitute who locked the child in a closet, in a bag, duct-taped. And he did that because she would make noise when he had clients over. He also offered this child to his clients for sex. And he was busted when one of his clients came over and reported a foul odor in the apartment, and also that this dirt bag, this Francisco Javier Rio Covarrubias, had offered the child for sex. Well, guess what? This 30-year-old guy is one of Obama's dreamers. Yes, he's here under the DACA, the Deferred Action, which the Supreme Court has agreed to review. I will put this story in the show notes. It's very sick, but we haven't heard a lot about this guy. By no means is he a valedictorian. Thanks for listening today, guys. Enjoy the football if you're not already. I'll be back next week for the first program of February 2016. And thanks to all of you who contribute. Go to the tip jar. It makes all the difference. And we'll be back where the show never ends at TeriO'Brien.com. So go there every day. And remember, stay tough because only the strong can stay free.